What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
Guys, it is Fight Week UFC 311, so we have got to get into the predictions. We're going to start with what is probably going to be a very violent striking affair for as long as it lasts. Jamal Hill versus Yuri Procházka. Nick, I'm really excited to get your breakdown and ultimately your prediction on this. Don't know who you're taking yet. However, I do think you're going to be like me and probably pick that this fight ends in finish. So what are your thoughts and who are you taking?
Oh, you got me. Spoiler alert. My prediction is that this fight ends in finish. But before I tell you who gets the finish, I do have to say that this fight is perfect as the feature bout because it serves as a perfect pre-main course palate cleanser for these likely 25-minute long main and co-main fights that are going to have a lot of grappling in them. So I think this is perfect. Neither guy wants to take this fight to the ground. They want to get the job done on their feet, using their hands mostly. And I think coming off of a TKO loss from Alex Pereira, both of these guys really do have to come in with a little bit more caution and be a little bit more calculated when they decide to enter, especially Yuri, because he comes in with his hands down so much and he relies on his power and his durability. But at 205 with these heavy hitters like Alex and Jamal, you can only afford to get hit a couple times before you start to, go unconscious or get really wobbly and all of your technique starts to go out the window. It also drains the gas tank. So I think that Jamal Hill seems to me like the kind of guy that's going to come in a little bit more poised, controlled, and calm. And I think Yuri Procházka might look to do that at the very beginning of the fight, but he'll feel, maybe the elements of the crowd booing or, anticipation and everything, angst building inside the cage. And he might, bite the bullet and go for the first bit of big offense. And that's where I see Jamal really playing into exactly what he wants to do to get his hand raised against Yuri. I think Jamal needs to wait for Yuri to come in with these big offensive attacks that usually leave him a little bit off balance because they're such grandiose motions. And I think Jamal, if he stays really nice and tight with his guard and his legs and his balance are in check, and he lands some nice crisp hands, mostly counters, mostly with the hands, he can do a lot of damage on Yuri in the early parts of this fight, which would make the later rounds much better for him. Because as the fight goes on, I think Yuri's chances increase for winning. But if Jamal does the damage and gets his hands on Yuri early and often, I believe he will likely get the fight finished. The only other thing I want to say about Yuri before I give my official prediction is when Yuri goes out there and he does start to land his big shots on you, he goes for more variety than most 205ers. And that's what I think Jamal really has to watch out for. If he does wind up in a firefight with Yuri, he's got to be the more composed one, look for those counters and look to escape, not look to just brawl with him, because that's when Yuri does start to implement those really unorthodox techniques that he's so good at. And that's when you get caught. You got a 230-pound guy on fight night jumping up and throwing a knee at your face, you're going to go out. So I say all that to say Jamal Hill, in my opinion, is probably going to come in with the better mindset and game plan. Plus, he's probably naturally going to have a little bit more patience than Yuri, and that ultimately makes me think we see Jamal Hill get a second-round TKO finish. I don't see us getting into the third round because I think he's going to do enough damage with quality shots, quality boxing in the first and second round to get the job done. I even believe that Yuri Procházka will likely score more strikes numbers-wise on the scorecards before it's all said and done, but I think Jamal does more quality work with his hands and gets the job done.
Yeah, that's really interesting and really well thought out points about Jamal. And the things that you brought up are certainly the danger points for Yuri Procházka as he goes into this fight. Jamal Hill, what does he do best? He gets the job done with his boxing. He's a good counter striker. Jamal's not the most technical guy on the planet. If you watch him hit mitts or you watch him in some of his fights, it doesn't look like, for example, a Rafael Fiziev would look on the pads, or an Alex Pereira, of course, not by a long shot. But what works is what's good. What's effective is what's good and what gets you your hand raised in the octagon. And a lot of people like to hate on Jamal Hill, but the guy was a champion. He did beat some very good fighters on his way to getting the belt, and he's still very dangerous and he's still very young, especially for the 205 division.
For sure.
Here's where I see him potentially having some problems. After Yuri's last fight that he lost to Alex Pereira, he said, I need to change some things in my game. And if I don't change them, then I need to stop fighting entirely.
Oh, man.
So I think Yuri has gone back and revisited his game plan. What did Yuri do wrong in the fight against Alex Pereira? He's a bit too predictable. He's a bit too cumbersome with his movement. As you said, he steps into range with his hands down, and he doesn't always create the most difficult to read angles when he shoots, and he kind of just comes right for you, caution to the wind, and he's got a great clinch, that spinning back elbow against Dominic Reyes, things like that. He's very crafty, but his entries are a bit telegraphed, and he does it without a lot of caution, like I said, with the hands down and stuff. So I think what we're going to see out of Yuri is that he's worked on his angles and his entries, specifically entering intelligently.
Right.
I don't think he's just going to rush in on Jamal, because we know Jamal's got great hooks, great uppercuts, really good counters, and he's very powerful.
Right.
So Yuri, if I can watch a Jamal Hill fight and decipher that, certainly Yuri and his team can go even further.
For sure.
So they're going to have him prepared for those counters. And I think what they're going to do for Yuri, and what we may see differently out of him, is that he utilizes a little bit of footwork and a different type of striking cadence to get himself to the side of Jamal. So he's off the center line, in other words.
Okay.
And then he's entering in and striking with Jamal. And you're never not in the danger zone if you're in the octagon with Jamal Hill, but you're less in the danger zone if you're slightly off to the left or to the right, rather than right down the pipe with those big uppercuts and those big hooks. So look for a lot of angle changes and movements out of Yuri. He's very creative with his striking, so he'll find ways to implement that into his game. And I think ultimately he's going to be able to find the clinch from those positions as well, where he has those really nasty elbows, really good knees.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what's going to really start to resonate for him. Now, Jamal's going to be dangerous from the time it starts until the fight finishes. So I'm very cautious in my prediction, but I believe we're going to see enough change out of Yuri Procházka for him to get his hand raised over Jamal Hill, just because the depth of strikes that he has at his disposal. Jamal doesn't necessarily have that. Jamal's got better hands than Yuri, but he doesn't have an overall better striking game. And if Yuri can implement a few things that keeps him safe on his entries, I think the depth of what he has in his toolbox will start to take over the fight. I like third round TKO for Yuri Procházka.
Yeah, if Yuri's able to fight this fight in multiple different ranges rather than just in the boxing range, I think it'll greater his chances to win.
Absolutely. Guys, let us know in the comments. We're split on this one. Who are you taking in the feature bout of UFC 311?